commandment, says the Lord, love one another as I have loved you. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "To you who hear, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. To the person who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other one as well. And from the person who takes your cloak, do not withhold even your tunic. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from the one who takes what is yours, do not demand it back. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. For if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you lend money to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners and get back the same amount. But rather, love your enemies and do good to them, and lend expecting nothing back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Stop judging, and you will not be judged. Stop condemning, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and gifts will be given to you. A good measure, packed together, shaken down, and overflowing will be poured into your lap. For the measure with which you measure will in turn be measured out to you." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning, everyone. From great moments are born great opportunities. Those were the words that Coach Herbert Brooks gave to his 1980 men's U.S. hockey team in Lake Placid. As I reflected on that moment, I couldn't believe that it was almost 40 years ago. It feels like yesterday. And what a beautiful moment that was, not only in a sporting event, but it had so much more meaning than just hockey, right? It was these young men facing this mammoth task of beating this Russian team that were basically all professionals. And the last time they had played, they lost like 8-0 or something. And they actually beat our NHL All-Stars by like 7 or 8 goals. So Herbert Brooks, or Herbie Brooks, walked into that locker room and said, from great opportunities, or from great moments, come great opportunities. And how true is that? Especially if we look at 2 of the readings today, the first one about King David, and also the opportunities that we have in life to be able to forgive. I want to focus first on King David. He had an unbelievable moment presented to him. To give you a little bit of background, King Saul at this point had become, let's say, a little mad. Right? And I don't mean mad as in angry, mad as in maybe a little insane. He became kind of tyrannical. And he wanted David dead. He was very jealous of David, especially all the popularity that he was receiving. And so he put out a bounty and looking for him and wants to kill him. And David has this moment, as we heard in the first reading, he's actually inside King Saul's tent. They're all asleep. And there's a spear right there in the ground. And David has an opportunity to kill him. And he may have been justified in doing so. Because here is his enemy, one of his fellow Israelites, whom he trusted and had a relationship with, and the man has this bounty on him and wants him dead. He could have easily picked up that spear and thrust it through him. But he doesn't do that. They step out of the tent and they go their way. Now this reading ends a little short. As the story continues, when all of those folks wake up in the camp, David is standing up on the hill, and as Saul comes out of his tent, he shouts out, "Here is your servant. Know that that very night your life was in my hands, and I spared you, because you are God's anointed." But not only because of that, but because David found it in his heart to be able to forgive his enemy. Now, who is our enemy? Sometimes we think that our enemy is somewhere out there, somebody from a faraway land that's going to come and do us harm. Yes, I guess in some sense that could be true, but 90% of the time, sometimes our enemies are right from within our own homes, our own extended family, friends, co-workers, who become our enemies. When I say enemies, I don't mean somebody I may dislike. I don't like somebody's personality or their foibles or idiosyncrasies. Jesus never uses the word like or dislike. God could care less about who you like and dislike. He knows that people have different personalities, and that's going to naturally happen. Those people are not your enemies. Usually an enemy is someone who wants to do you bodily harm, or wants to do you maybe some type of character assassination, if you will, or betray you. And this is what happened with David. And he was able to forgive Saul, knowing that Saul will probably still come back after him. And as the story goes, yes, Saul relents for a little while, but then he continues his pursuit. The whole time, David on the run. But David was presented many moments of great opportunity throughout his life. If you ever read his story, it's quite incredible, especially when he strikes down Goliath. Here are all of these great soldiers and warriors of Israel. They got their armor on, they're battle tested and seasoned, and there's a little scrawny teenager in the midst of them. David's probably only about 14, 15 years old. And somebody's got to face Goliath. Nobody wants to go out. David sees the moment and responds to God and says yes. And you know how the story goes. Now, I'm sure there were other times great moments were presented him and he may have failed, right, if we read his life. Same for us. Jesus is telling his own disciples and the people listening in the gospel, there are great moments presented to you that can have great opportunity to be able to make amends with someone, to be able to forgive and be merciful, especially to those who are your enemies. I'll share a personal story with you about forgiveness. It has to do with my extended family. Somewhere in the midst of all of this, these folks kind of got mad at one another over money. I'm sure you've heard this before, either in your own lives or from others, and it wasn't even that much. But because people got stuck in their principle, they almost became enemies to one another. People who were closely related. And I remember if I got invited to one of their weddings, the other family wouldn't show up, because I kind of remained, and my family kind of remained neutral. If the other family, they had any kind of functions, they didn't invite the other family. This went on for years. All because of a matter of principle, and they are wrong, and they basically are enemies. So we're not going to have anything to do with them. So finally, my ordination reception comes. So I'm sitting at the table with my mom, and we're figuring out who we're going to invite, and you got to invite obviously all your aunts and uncles and cousins. And my mom says, well, you know what? when we invite these folks, we're going to put family A down in this corner of the hall, and we're going to put family B down at this corner of the hall. It sounds kind of hilarious, right? You probably may have, something like that may have happened to you as well. So I said to her, no, we're not. It's been going on long enough. This is a reception for an ordination of a priest, and we're going to keep family members, 100 feet apart from one another because we don't want them to see each other. I said, here, I got a better idea. We're going to sit them all at the same table. My mother had the same reaction. And she's like, no, you can't do that. I said, then none of them are coming. I won't invite any of them. And then she says, well, then you'll become their enemy. I said, I don't care. I don't care. They're all going to sit at the same table. So lo and behold, they all come and they realize they're sitting at the same table. But after about an hour or two, God's mercy began to work. They were talking, laughing, and before we all knew it, they were making plans to get together. Little moments, great opportunity, right? They're able to forgive. Now, we may have in our own lives someone or someones who are having a hard time forgiving. And I'll tell you why that happens. When we feel that we've been wronged, and we may have been wronged, right? But what winds up happening is we don't want to forgive because we've kind of made a standard or a set of principles. They were wrong, they have to come to me, I'm not going to take the first step, and before you know it, 1 year passes, second year, 5 years, 10 years. And what does Jesus do with his enemies? When he was nailed to the cross and he's dying on it, he says, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Now, when we read that story or reflect on that, we automatically assume that he's speaking about who? The Romans who nailed him to the cross and certain Jewish folks who had him set up and put on this mock trial, that they were his enemies. The very specific people who were involved. Folks, when he says, forgive them for they do not know what they do, he wasn't only talking about the Romans or the specific Jewish people who set him up, he was talking about me and you. We nailed him to the cross. We had become Jesus's enemies. You may say to yourself, well, I wasn't there. No, you weren't there, but your sins were. And when we sin, in some way, we become enemies of God. Now you may say, my sins aren't that bad. St. Paul says, if it wasn't for God's mercy, even your tiniest, smallest sin would throw you into hell. And Jesus didn't want that. That's why he forgives. My mom used to say to me all the time, you have to forgive no matter what people do to you, because you never want to face Jesus and have that conversation with him about why you withheld your forgiveness. Because he's going to say to you, I did not withhold my forgiveness to you. Now you're stuck, right? So when Jesus goes through this beautiful passage about forgiving, if your enemy strikes you on one side of the face, turn the other. When they ask for your shirt, give your coat. Give it all away, because none of it means anything when it comes to the kingdom of God. None of those things are going to keep you safe. Your coat, your cheek, none of it. What will keep you safe is your love and the mercy with which you give to others. God bless you.